Let's start with the T-Rex dinosaur, possibly the most iconic predator in the history of Earth. You have deeply studied and written about their evolution, biology, ecology, and behavior. So let's first maybe put ourselves in the time of the dinosaurs and imagine we're standing in front of a T-Rex. What does it look like? What are the key features of the dinosaur in front of us?
It's gigantic. It's almost trite now because everyone knows T-Rex is massive. But yes, if you actually stand in front of one, you would be seriously impressed just how absolutely vast they are. So I've got a copy of a T-Rex skull downstairs from my office. And yeah, I could fit comfortably through its mouth. So it would be just about capable of swallowing me whole, and I'm a pretty big guy.
Your body, you can fit in its mouth.
I can fit through it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not even a particularly big one. It's a copy of the one that's in the Smithsonian. And they get bigger than that.
You have a 2-scale copy.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah, it's a cast. So it's just a giant mold made and then
nice.
Pulled out like the dentist do your teeth, but very, very big. So yeah, they are 12-ish meters long. So what's that? 14 yards. 4.5, maybe 5 to the top of the head standing up, so another 6 yards high, and then 7-ish metric tons. What's that, about 8.5 short tons? So a colleague of mine, Tom Holtz, described them as an orca on land. That's it. It is a killer whale-sized animal, but on legs on land. And those are massive predators. So you're looking at something absolutely colossal. And I think that is what will stun you. I think people don't realize how big a lot of animals are, which sounds weird. But I used to work in a few zoos, and something I think you notice is when you go and see things like elephants or giraffes or rhinos, everything's built to the scale of the animal. The elephant house is huge. The doors are huge. The bars are huge. The food is huge. And so you don't see them in the context of something that you have a good frame of reference for. And I learnt this, when I was at London Zoo and was going into the basement of the old elephant and rhino pavilion, and a rhino stuck its head out from like this gap in the wall. And the head was twice the size I thought it was once you stood next to it. And the same with an elephant. I once stood next to an elephant closer than you are to me now. And you go, oh, they are so much bigger than I thought. And I think it's similar in museums. Like, even when you get up relatively close to a T-Rex skeleton, there's a bit of space between you and it, and then some bars, and then it's usually raised up a little bit on a little mount to hold the platform, and then you stand back from that, and you don't actually get to stand like under them. And when you do that, you realize that the foot finishes at my knee.
So is a T-Rex bigger than an elephant? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, a very large savanna African elephant is 5 to 6 tons. And we're looking at 7+. And a biped. And a carnivore. So a big lion is 200 kilos. So 430 pounds. Yeah.
Well, that's why I mean it's widely considered to be probably the most epic predator in the history of Earth.
Yeah, right? I mean, and I think more than that, I think it's one of the most iconic animals, period. I mean, if you're listing things that the average person has heard of, lion, elephant, giraffe, tiger, hippo, rhino, there's a few more, but T-Rex is coming somewhere up in that list. That's how prominent it is as an animal. So, yeah, it's almost inescapable as a paleontologist, and then doubly so for me who works on dinosaurs, and doubly so again because I do work on tyrannosaurs, that, it just dominates conversations.
Well, some of the other features maybe we can go through.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Big skull, big head, small hands.
Massive head, very kind of boxy. It's very robust. Big forward-facing eyes. Massive eyes, I mean, tennis ball-sized eyes. These things had amazing eyesight. Giant teeth. There's a cast of a Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth. Yeah, I know. So
how
it looks a bit bigger than it is. So this is all root. So this would be stuck in the jaw. This would be supporting
but that tip part that's the tooth.
The tip, as you call it. And so that would comfortably go through pretty much any part of it. And then you realize just how thick it is. So this is a cast of a thing called Carcharodontosaurus from Africa. You get it down in Niger and a few other places like that. And they're very, very big. Not as big as T-Rex, but not a million miles away. And then if you look at the teeth in profile, they're a surprisingly similar shape and not far off in size as well. And then you look at them that way on and you realize it's a third of the width. So this isn't just massive, it's thick. And of course, being thick, it makes it strong. And with that giant head, with all that extra bone and then all the extra musculature attached to that giant head, they've got this uber powerful bite and the ability to just chomp through basically anything it wants to. So yeah, they are truly unusual in that regard. Even actually compared to a lot of the other very big tyrannosaurs, they're often a kind of step above in their proportions.
So incredible crushing power in the jaw.
Yeah. And then, as you say, like this really short bull neck, because you've got this massive weight of this head up front, so you need to hold it up and not tip forwards. Really quite a massive body. Again, there's 2 or 3 other big carnivorous dinosaurs, which people argue, oh, maybe they're a little bigger than T-Rex, maybe they're a little smaller, but it's always in terms of length, which is one way of looking at things. You know, pythons are very long, but they're nothing like as massive as, a lion or a tiger. Same thing. T-Rex is massive. It is built. So really big kind of barrel-shaped chest, making the body very, very big as well. And so that's why, there's things like Giganotosaurus and Mapusaurus from South America. Maybe they get a bit longer, another meter or so in length. But in mass, we're talking about maybe only 2/3, 3/4. So T-Rex is just massively bigger than basically any other big carnivore we know of. And then, little arms, as you say. So this is not great, but it's a cast of a T-Rex arm. It's not the biggest animal. They do get a bit bigger than this. But as I love showing, it's not a million miles off the size of my own. And I could do with a diet, but I don't weigh 7 tons. So, it really is really pretty small.
2 claws, 2 fingers.
Yeah, so 2 fingers. You'll see sometimes that they say there's a third. This is a slight misnomer. So you do see this extra little bone here. This doesn't turn up in all of them, and it's an extra hand bone. So it's the metacarpals, but it's not supporting an extra digit.
So mostly functionality-wise, it wasn't very functional.
They're not doing very much at all. This is what's called the deltopectoral crest. It's really important for basically big arm movements because it's deltoids and pectorals. The radius and ulna are really quite thin, thinner than ours. The fingers are pretty stocky. The claws look big and curved, and they are, but other tyrannosaurs, and indeed other carnivores generally, much more curved claws. And then they have these little things. Where can I say it? So there you see there's a little mark. That's a ligamentous pit. And so what you can imagine is if you're trying to hold on to something and something's wriggling, you want grip.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a risk that you just dislocate your fingers. So we have ligaments that hold bone to bone. And if you just put it flat to flat surface area, there's only so much you can attach. Whereas if you turn that into a little hemispherical dip, you get a lot more surface area for your area, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you have a really big ligamentous pit, it means there's a really big ligament, which means your fingers are really strong and they're really resistant to being wiggled around and pulled as if, you've grabbed something that doesn't want you to kill it. Well, T-Rex has probably the smallest ligamentous pits of any tyrannosaur. So that kind of suggests it's not doing very much. And again, when you look at the claws, proportionally, they're not that big and they're not that curved. So even though it looks like quite a wicked thing to us, remember, put this on a 7-ton animal whose individual teeth are the size of entire fingers. Suddenly that arm doesn't look like it's doing very much.
What about the feet?
So massive. Again, not surprisingly, you're supporting a colossal amount of weight, but they have this beautiful adaptation in the foot. So the equivalent bones in the foot, the metatarsals, so for us make up the flat of the feet, but these animals walk like birds. So they've got 3 toes on the ground and then the metatarsals stick nearly vertically. Now, it overall extends the length of the leg, so you can walk a little bit faster. You get a slightly bigger stride length. Don't worry, I've got the right bone here.
Nice.
But they also have, there's a good one. That one's a great one. But they also have this really neat adaptation in the middle bone. So you can see it on this one quite well. And that this is actually not a tyrannosaur. This is an ornithomimosaur. So one of the really ostrich-like ones, Gallimimus from the first Jurassic Park, it has the same thing. You can see the normal bones would be really quite long and square and then flat at the top. And instead, this thing shrinks in the middle and turns into this kind of flattened diamond shape. And what that means is the bones either side kind of lock it. In fact, at the top end, it actually tends to wiggle a bit. So it actually goes left and then right. And of course, what that really does is then help these things lock together. And so this is an adaptation to basically lock the foot and make it stable. And we see it in a whole bunch of things, independently evolved. Early tyrannosaurs don't have this. Early ornithomimosaurs don't have this. The oviraptorosaurs, the early ones, don't have this. And the later ones acquire it. And a couple of other groups as well. And it's about making the foot stable. And what that really does is make the foot energy efficient. So you can imagine, as an animal, we have some cartilage and we've got some ligaments and tendons joining all the bones together and holding joints stable. When you push down, that's going to compress them to a little degree. And when you lift that weight off, they're actually going to spring back. You're going to get a tiny little energy return. It's the idea of those air soles they put in all the trainers and stuff in the 90s. It's that same principle. And you'll get a little bit of energy return. But of course, big force, particularly for a big heavy animal, it's going to take the kind of path of least resistance. And so if your bones are all kind of loose in the foot, what they're going to do is they're going to tend to splay out and you're actually going to lose that energy. But if you lock the feet together, the bones can't move. And instead, that's going to further compress those soft tissue bits and give you a bit more spring.
And this is all about, this is about the mobility, about the dynamics of the movement.
It makes you more efficient. It means you're putting less energy in to walk because you're just getting a little bit of spring off every single step.
I should say that I deeply admire people like Russ Tedrick, like the Boston Dynamics teams, like the Tesla Optimus robot teams that look at bipedal and quadrupeds robot movement.
Yeah.
And they try to make human-like movement to, basically efficient movement. And so the question here is, how the hell is a T-Rex, its size, bipedal, able to move as a predator? It's a weird body shape, is it not?
The big head makes it look more odd, but you look at dinosaurs as a whole, and over a third, probably 45% is the group called theropods, which were all bipeds. So T-Rex, Allosaurus, Velociraptor, Spinosaurus, many, many others that people may have heard of. They're all bipeds built in this way. There's a whole bunch of ancestral groups which were doing something very similar, including various crocodiles or relatives of crocodiles. And then the birds are bipeds. Birds are actually doing it in a much weirder way than theropods are. The theropods are basically a lizard on its back legs. I'm oversimplifying a lot. I can hear paleontologists screaming as I've just said it's a lizard standing up. It's not a lizard standing up. But they're doing a lot of the same stuff in the same way. And that is really functionally about where you put muscles. Because what you really want to do to walk forwards is you want to basically pull the leg back so that you're pushing the body off. Mm-hmm. And the way they do that is the musculature on the tail. So we don't have a tail, and indeed mammals that even do have a tail, elephants and even lions, it's a piddly little thing. There's not a lot of muscle there. But if you look at a lizard, particularly if you look at something like a crocodile, you see this massive, massive block of muscle sitting on the first third to half of the tail. And that's what dinosaurs are doing. It's the same thing as lizards and crocs. They have this giant set of muscles on the first half of the tail. That's anchoring on the femur, so the thigh bone on the back of that. And muscles contract. That's the one thing they do. But now you've got a giant muscle. Yeah, and T-Rex, this muscle's like 2.5, 3 meters long. Mm-hmm. It's going to be like this wide in the middle. So when that contracts, the leg goes back, the foot stationary on the ground, so the animal goes forwards.
So the tail is
integral to movement.
It's a huge part of the biomechanics of the movement.
We do it with the butt. So we're kind of weirdly how we organize our muscles. But this is generally probably a better way of doing it because you can get a really long muscle. And of course, the longer the muscle, the more contraction you can have. The hyper version of this is kangaroos. So kangaroos supposedly get more efficient the faster they move. They get so much energy return that when they're moving faster, they get more compression from the landing, meaning they get more spring.
So we should be imagining this gigantic, thick tail big body,
Oh, yeah.
big head,
Yep.
and biped. And how fast does it move?
So this is one of those things that's gone backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. There was a paper arguing that we'd probably been overestimating various speeds, primarily based on footprints. There's been, I don't know how many papers trying to do T-Rex speed. The most recent one that was pretty detailed, I think, had it clocked at, so I think it was 25 miles an hour, so 40 kph was the very upper end of the estimate. So probably a bit less than that.
Well, that means it can move.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, big things move quick. I've seen rhino and hippo going at full tilt, and yeah, they're a lot quicker than you'd think. And at least part of it is simply stride length. When your legs are 3-ish meters long, it's hard not to cover a lot of ground with a single step. And yeah, big theropods, T-Rex is going to be a power walker. It's not going to run in the conventional biomechanical sense where both feet are off the ground at once.
So it's not running, it's power walking.
Yeah. But when you've got a 4 or 5 meter long stride, it doesn't really matter whether you're airborne or not.
Power walking. So you're never, running, there's moments in time when both feet are off the ground, and you're saying likely here one foot is always on the ground.
Yeah, it pretty much has to be for loading.
Oh, for just because of the mass of the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's that's the origin of cinema.
What's that?
This is Edward Muybridge.
Mhm.
So the origin of cinema was a bet as to whether or not, whilst running, a horse had all 4 feet off the ground.
Mhm.
And no one really knew this for sure. And a guy called Edward Muybridge, he was British, but he was living in the States. He was a keen photographer. And he basically did what people have seen the Wachowskis do for The Matrix. He set up a whole row of cameras and set up a whole bunch of triggers and had a horse run through them. So it took loads of photos. And lo and behold, in one of them, the feet are off the ground. The guy won his bet. But he also realized that we already had things like zoopraxiscopes, the little thing you spin with a slit.
Mhm.
So you see that, right. So he did that with horses. And now you have a moving photograph. And that's pretty much the origin of cinema, was a bet about biomechanics.
Yeah, it's always a good question and a bet, and there you go. You're off to the races.
Yeah.